No, thank you so much for accepting my invitation for doing this. Because yeah, as I was just telling you via email, yeah, I'm doing this interview series with drummers who have developed interesting and personal approaches to drum solo performances as part of my PhD research, and I think you're really one of them because I checked out besides your album many of your live performances. So were you playing solo last night, or did you play with somebody else?
No, 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 it was a trio.
Okay,
It
okay,
was,
okay, cool, cool, cool.
um, mhm.
Um, Yeah, yeah, and I'm super excited to like finally meet you face to face because I've heard so much about you from Camila and other common
Oh,
friends. So
mhm.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
finally we get to I don't know exchange a bit ideas and so yeah, I guess my first question is when and how do you start playing solo and what pushed you to start this practice? Like why were you drawn to performing solo?
Mhm. Uh, I had no choice. I
Okay.
was, yeah, I was in Lisbon, learning classic percussion and playing solo pieces. It's very important. It's one of the focus is that you play solo pieces from the modern classic repertoire or transcriptions to marimba or so I didn't have a choice. I had to play it was not my own music, but one of the first concerts I did at the conservatory. It's a music school in Lisbon. There was a different music system. There was a music school that we call the it's called the conservatory.
Okay.
But if you want a bachelor or master, you go to another school where I went later.
Okay.
So when I was at the conservatory, yeah, I had to. So one of my first concerts there, I had to play a solo marimba piece. So
Okay.
yeah, and it became part of my practice to play solo pieces from the classic contemporary repertoire. Yeah.
So you're classically trained, and then you moved more into the creative music scene and the improv scene.
Yeah, uh, when I was learning classic percussion, and then there was a point I said, okay, I'm getting. I started a bit later. I didn't start it as a child. I was already a teenager, and I said, no, I have to. I'm I'm in the limit. I have to take make a bachelor master. And when I was still learning classic percussion at the conservatory, there was a subject that it was mandatory for everybody. It was 3 years. It was uh, composition techniques and analysis, or analysis and techniques of composition. It was not a creative class where you compose your stuff. No, you learn the music from other composers. And I had a very engaging teacher. He was, yeah. And so it was the first time I had contacts with music uh, from that perspective, not from listening, not from playing, but just open a score and try to understand what's there. And also to practice the style of that composer. We had to practice. We had some practical exercises so I got that experience with a teacher I really liked. It's a composer called Eurico Carrapatos. And yeah, it changed. It was a turning page in my life. So when I took up a bachelor, I took up composition. I didn't go to jazz school. I was in a private jazz school in Lisbon for a while. There was no jazz program. Um, at the time, there was at the bachelor level in Lisbon, there was not. So I went to this private school. But yeah, so then my bachelor is in fact in composition.
Wow.
And then yeah, and then in Lisbon, if you want to study composition, not if you want, if you are in the composition program, electronic music is mandatory. You
Okay.
have every semester a block of electronic music.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, that's when I started improvising. Because if you are playing electronics, there's not so much pieces you can look at the score and practice. You
Yeah.
have to do your own. And then without knowing, I was improvising and playing. And it was not supposed to be improvising. I was supposed to compose with electronics and for electronics. But the scores for electronics not usually are not very detailed, and you
They
just
were pretty
put
vague.
some marks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then that practice uh,
Developed.
it,
No. Yeah.
yeah, no, exactly. When I took then my master during the master program, because my master is called Multimediale Komposition in
Okay.
German.
Yeah.
Well, it's a master program for students, either composers, performers, installation, software programmers. It's for people who want to work with music or image and technology.
Okay.
So, so my master was very focused on using technology for music and
Was that in
computer.
Berlin? That was in Berlin.
No, it was in Hamburg. It was in
Hamburg.
Hamburg.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, and then yeah, once you are working with electronics, the improvisation can come very, you don't even notice that it's there. Yeah, and that's in fact how I started to improvise. Yeah,
Okay. So it's
so
a practice that you've been, developing for how many years? Like 10 years or something? Like,
uh, I started with electronics. It was. It's longer than that because if I count with my study
studies? Yeah.
time,
Mhm.
it's 2006, 2007. It's almost 20
Wow.
years now.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And
Yeah.
wow. And so, like, I guess, um, at the beginning, since like you said, you're coming more from, like a classical training, um,
Mhm.
like were you more like composing and structuring your performances, or like you've like while playing solo, you've always had this more improvisatory approach to the practice? Like how much composed and improvised are, are your
Yeah.
performances?
Yeah. At the beginning, they were more composed, more structured because I had to repeat it several times. I was doing that in the context of academia and then composition studies. So you're supposed to compose.
Mm,
So at the beginning, the approach was very compositional.
yeah.
Even sometimes if it was instructions or a texture or B. And then as I started distanciating from academia for because I finished my studies, and then it became more improvisational.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
even now, like when you go play, you don't have any kind of set list. It's just like like maybe the path that you're gonna, like the instruments also that you're gonna go through, since like you bring like a specific kit, a specific specific gears.
yeah, it depends. It depends. Sometimes I just go on stage and play. I don't, but sometimes, especially if I'm working on a particular sound concept, or if I have a new instrument in my setup or a new electronic, if I always change. It's very seldom to do the same thing two times.
Okay.
Sometimes more than composition, I think of things I want to do in my solo. Like there is a part where I want to play this texture, or there's at some point I want to play this instrument on my left or on my right with the contact microphones, and I want to do this kind of phrasing here. Um, or sometimes I structure, oh, I would start with wood blocks, and then I start with wood, I will introduce some metal, and then I go to cymbals, I go back to, it's just a more vague frame that I don't always follow
Yeah,
when I'm
yeah,
playing. Yeah, so normally that. that's how I'm structuring these days. I'm not.
So you
I,
think
I, I
more of texture and like visually kind of like the like maybe gestures and the movement, like physical movement that you have to do through the set instead of thinking of form.
Yeah, exactly. I think more of textures, or for instance, I want this texture, then this one, and then this one, and then I improvise how I connect them, how I build them up, or how I transition from one to another. And sometimes the things I was planning, okay, this texture is gonna be then sometimes in the process of getting there, I find something that
Yeah.
becomes yeah, that has that oh no, I'm gonna highlight this instead, and yeah, forget the texture I was planning.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And so,
Mm.
and in terms of references, you mentioned that you performed a lot of different, classical music composers. So I guess like a main reference was definitely contemporary classical music. But I was also interested, like if you could talk a bit about that, and also like instead if you know thinking more about the drum set, since now like you perform in front of a kit, you don't like, of course you integrate a lot of percussions and different
Mhm.
preparations to your set, but I was wondering if you also have like some you know drummers references that like people you checked out and you get inspired by, um or if it was like something that came from you
Ye-
know
Yeah, I think some of the first records I remember listening with drums and electronics, it was the drummer Will Guthrie.
uh-huh.
And I was, oh, okay, this is this is what I imagine is possible. There are people doing this. So I was here in Berlin. I was seeing his name around a lot. So it was one of the very beginning. One of the percussionists. One of the drummers who plays drum kit and also has some electronics. I never saw him performing solo. I saw him in different contexts, but never solo. I saw him duo, ensemble. So he was probably one of the first, some of the first records I found.
Oh,
Um, uh, at some point, a bit much later, almost recently, I feel almost ashamed of saying that, but I discovered Tony Oxley kind of very late in life. Because when I started singing improvisation, he was not performing anymore. I don't know. Somehow I just came, people were surprised that I didn't know his work. So lately I have been exploring a lot his records and listening a lot.
yeah. And instead talking
Uh,
about classical music,
hmm?
and instead talking about classical music,
Uh, no, no, no. This in improvised
yeah, yeah, yeah.
experimental. Ah,
I know. But I said like instead in classical music, what were like your references, like when you started?
I had, yeah, I had a very strong reference for me. It was Evelyn Glennie. Uh, because it was a woman. I was like 11 or 12 years old when I read something about her. I couldn't believe that it was possible. So, and then yeah, and then many of her records are referenced in the classic music world. Yeah, concert for marimba for percussion.
Mhm.
People started to write for her, so she was the first. She was a pioneer. So, and when I was also trying to get away a bit from the classic world and trying to introduce myself to other practices, I found a record of Evelyn Player, which is totally improvised. It's a record called Shadow Behind the Iron Sun. And this was probably the first record of improvised music I ever heard. It was the Evelyn Glennie improvised solo album. Yeah,
Wow,
so it was a big reference for me at the beginning.
wow. I'll go check her out, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and okay, and so at first, at the beginning of your your solo performance process, where you was there a phase in which you performed without electronics, or was it something that you integrated since the kind of very beginning, in the context of improvised music?
No, yeah, as I mentioned before, I started with electronics and then introducing amplified objects, and then a little drum, and then a cymbal, and then two drums, and then two cymbals, and then a hi-hat. It was uh, it was like going back to my former percussion and drumming practice, but uh,
Like in the
with
other
the
way,
electronics already exactly. It was the other way.
way around.
Uh, s- so my in more in the experimental or improvised music, um, uh, yeah, it for me it's very connected to electronics. I very seldom play acoustic solos sets, but I do sometimes, but it's very, very seldom.
Mhm.
Um, for me, the use of electronics, it's what really makes me feel free. And yeah, yeah. And and where I believe I can introduce really unexpected ideas, things that I was not planning before or never thought of it. Suddenly I do some, oh, this is cool with this effect here, or yeah. So there's some kind of I don't want to call it random, but
Yeah,
there's some spontaneity the way I use electronics. Yeah, that really pushed me to feel more confident in improvising.
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like, yeah. Now let's get into your electronic setup, I guess, because I was checking out some videos of your
Yeah.
live performances, um, and I I saw that your setup is really like changeable. Like it feels that you always change something, both in the electronic part and in the acoustic part, and I think that's very beautiful too. That's a way really to challenge yourself, and I heard that from other drummers too, within this research, that they do this in order to challenge themselves all the time, to explore something new. Um, so like I saw that in some first of all, like the position of your electronic gears, I saw that mostly you keep them on your left side, but in some videos I saw that you also explored positioning them on your right side while you're sitting at the drums. Like, how was that experience of like exploring, like in a physical sense, because like as drummers normally we have like four limbs, like occupied, so integrating that extra, that extra tool, like also in a physical way. Like, did you try different combinations of exploring, first like using the left hand, the right hand, the feet? I don't know if you use like pedals on the ground, like if you want to elaborate on
Yeah, I use
that. Okay.
yeah, I, at the at some point I started to have I had the electronics on the right, but on the right side I also like to have a rack where I hang things.
Yeah.
Um, and at at some point it became confusing, and I thought, let me try to put it on the left.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I put it on the left. And I said, oh, okay, this in fact makes sense. Let's say I have the electronics here, more drum set here. So let me show my hands. Okay, electronics on the left, drum set in the middle, and percussion on the right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I have been. Now, even when I change things, that's I think this became quite stable at this point, and I have electronics, drum set in the middle, percussion on the right. But it was a process of trying, of putting things on the left and swapping, and at some point I also had in that rack I had some metal pieces with contact microphones, And then I thought, no, because I'm controlling the electronic on the left, but the microphones are there. Yeah, so I started to explore different ways. Yes, but I think at the last years, I don't. The last years, I would say, yeah, I have most electronics on the left, drum set in the middle, percussion on the on the right.
And you
Um,
control them with your feet, like you have something on the ground as well, or because I saw a video of a performance of yours, I think at this Miso Music Portugal or something, where like you also like in the first part of the show, which I really loved, you're on a table and you use this. It looks like an expression pedal or a little pedal board on the ground, and I was curious to know if maybe you use that also with your drum kit in your live set.
yeah, I do. That piece I play in that concert. This is a more composed piece that I play it already several times. I work with laptop and I have expression pedal. And I have a trigger. I'm not. I think I probably also have a trigger on the floor, but for sure I have expression pedal as I use it as a MIDI controller.
Hmm.
Um, to control different parameters because I change the computer, I have a max patch, and then I change, and then I change the effect, and then I can control different parameters with that pedal. And when I'm sitting and I have drum set, regardless if I'm using laptop or a more analog setup, which I'm using a lot lately with guitar pedals, contact microphones, modular synths. I also have pedals. I have to get the effects on the left. I have a pedal board with pedals on the left on the floor. So I have with my left foot, I control hi-hats and those pedals. And on the right, I have bass drum, expression pedal,
Ah,
and
wow.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, and a pedal to control the loop pedal.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
I, I I can trigger the loop with left and then stop and delete
With right.
with right.
Wow.
And I also control some parameters of the delay pedal with my right foot. So I have four pedals on the right and one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, and eight on the left.
Dang.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
lot
I have
to carry with you when you go play.
It's a lot, but I don't mind.
The
It's
mind,
it works. It works every yeah.
every effort. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So, how are the pedals connected? Like in the chain, in your chain. I guess the pedals on the left. Like, are they? Like each pedal control a signal of a mic? I guess no. Like they must have,
No, they are
right? Yeah.
completely changed. Yes.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So I start with a compressor
Okay.
and then I have delay and reverb on the table where I have the mixer. So those I control with my hands.
Okay.
Uh, Especially the delay pedal because to control the feedback and reverb, this is those are I think the buttons. I'm
You,
only buttons.
yeah, you
I'm
trigger more.
controlling live.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I have okay. Let's focus on the chain. So
More or
I
less,
have
yeah. Like,
so compressor, delay, reverb, and then it goes to octave.
okay.
And then an overtone, some kind of overtone effect pedal, uh, pitch shift, free. Ah, no, sorry, it's the wrong.
The wrong side. No.
Sorry. So it's no visually. I was saying visually from left to the right, but in the channel they are going on the other side. So
Okay.
okay, going back. I have. compressor, delay, reverb, and then they go to freeze pedal,
Okay.
pitch shift, overtone, octave,
Loop.
distortion,
Uh-huh.
fuzz, and loop. Loop is the last one.
Loop is the
Yeah.
last then, of course. Okay.
Yeah, there's I tried also I changed many times at I tried with the loop at the first one and then the last one so I
Yeah.
can also loop the effects. Yeah.
Wow, wow. And I saw like for example in I don't know in a live in Lisbon concert and in the Drum Solo Fest that you played in Berlin a couple of years ago that you have also like a mixer right on your left side like a little mixing desk and
Yeah.
I was like curious to know if like you're independent like you bring it yourself you bring all the mics so you're independent you know from an acoustic point of view and you have the control also of your mic sounds in terms of amplifying or if that's something that you know the sound engineers
Yeah.
control like how does
No, no, I control my effects
Mhm.
and regardless if I'm using contact microphones or other condenser or uh, so I plug my microphones to my mixer, to my effects. I send it again to my mixer, and
Okay
then I send it to the front of the house. And then the front, I don't make the front of the house sound. This the engineers
but you
they
just
make.
you send a stereo thing like out from your your mixer no
Depends. If I'm working more analog with the guitar pedals, usually I'm sending a mono or stereo signal.
okay.
But if I'm working with laptop, I might be sending four different channels or six. I have setups with six different channels
Mm-hmm.
where I send different things for, yeah,
And then
where I
you send just like two separate tracks just for electronics and then all the different mics for the acoustic drums. That's what you mean?
no, if I'm using laptop, it depends. If depends. I might be sending. I have different setups depend on the piece or depend how I am improvising. Sometimes I have long tracks that are like four-channel tracks or samples that I specialize on real time, like tick, 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 tick,
Mm-hmm.
tick, 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 like this. Also the effects, some effects, because once you have a computer and Max MESP, that's what I use to to work with electronics. Yeah, you can do anything. So normally I have a sound card and then I send, yeah, four, six. I don't think I in the last years I haven't been using more than six channels. So I sent six six
Yeah,
channels.
yeah.
And
And,
yeah.
and what's your what's relationship with the with programming versus analog versus using pedals? Like what are what challenges do you
Um,
face and you know what do you think it's more suitable for the kind of work that you're doing in your solo?
yeah, I like programming because it gives you a huge give you any crazy thing you think of, you can do it.
Yeah.
That's also dangerous because it's kind of, I think programming is addictive because you, oh no, I can do this, so I can do that, and then you are programming and you are not actually playing. You
Mm,
are for me, I at some point, so no, I have to find other ways to work with electronics because I start having ideas and now I'm gonna, and then the details, and it becomes really absorbing.
yeah.
And I wanted, and in fact, I started using guitar pedals and the more analog setup. It was a
Later.
total accident.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it was later. No, no, yeah, it was later. I started with computer, and no, I will never be one of those gear. I want to be
Nerd. Exactly.
collecting gear and pedals because you have a computer, you can do everything computer, that's all you need. It's more sustainable. But I was in a city, I was working on a theater piece in a city close to Berlin, a city called Cottbus, and I was preparing a solo set. I have a setup. I play with motorized music boxes.
Hmm.
So I was in the house where I was staying during that production. I was working on that with my computer, and then I had a solo set in Berlin at night. And then one of my cables broke, and I could not use the computer anymore. And I
Wow.
was to go to Berlin, like take the train, go directly to my gig, and the cable broke. What do I do? I went to a music shop.
Yeah.
They could not repair it. I could not find something I could replace. I went to electronics
Okay.
shops, and then I was like, okay, I have to. How am I gonna play a solo set for drums and electronics without
Electronic.
electronics? So I came to Berlin, and then and when I went to that music shop, the shop owner, he was so gentle and so nice. He really tried anything to help me that I felt bad not buying. I asked if he wanted money for, and he said, "Oh no, I could not really help you." And then I bought a guitar pedal, like very spontaneously. I
Okay.
bought a fuzz pedal. Yeah, yeah, I like to try things, and I have a guitar at home, so
Yeah.
I bought that pedal, and then wait a second, I'm sharing my studio with a guitar player, and I know he has a shelf full of pedals that he doesn't use.
Doesn't use.
I'm gonna call him and ask if I can use it for tonight. So I called him. He said, "Oh yeah, just take anything you like." So I came to Berlin. I just made some quick experiments on my setup with pedals.
Wow.
Okay, I'm good to go. And then I went to straight to the gig. And
Amazing.
then I said, "Oh, this is actually cool to play this."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So that it was nothing planned. It was really
Unexpected.
yeah, it was
Wow.
an accident that opened the path to
Wow. Wow.
another world.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so wait, let me. Okay, and
Mm.
I saw also in another, yeah. So, um, I guess like first question that that comes up from what you're saying is like what types of microphones then are you using? And because I saw that in some performances it feels that you have a mic on the left, which is directly connected to the chain of pedals, right? And then you use also contact mics, or is it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
contact mics that which are connected to the chain? Like how do you like what's the source of sound that goes into
Yeah.
the chain?
Yeah. These days I'm using mostly contact microphones. So I have some percussion instruments attached to my drum set setup where I put some contact microphones. Uh, Lately, I have been trying, and I did already some performances where I place the contact microphones directly on the snare drum in one of the cymbals and on the hi-hats. Uh, but I prefer to have other instruments, so then I can use the drum set without, oh, I have a contact microphone here.
Yeah,
Because if I have a contact microphone on the snare drum, then I have to on and off several times.
yeah,
But it works. Sometimes it works. It's different. But mostly I have a small drum or a cowbell or other kinds of bells or another cymbal with contact microphones, or sometimes I have some metal bars
yeah.
with
Where did
contact
you get
mic.
those? Like I saw that you use them also on the snare. What are they? Did you buy them or is
Yeah, I bought them. I went to a hardware market where you buy construction things.
okay, from
Yeah.
okay. Wow.
There's one here in my neighborhood. It's very close, so it's very practical. But it's a big city. Music shops are far away, and now there's very
And expensive
little.
too. I
Uh,
guess.
Very good hardware. Oh, this wood thing or this metal piece or yeah.
And
Um,
so these two contact mics, are they movable? Like, do you move them during the performance, or do they
no,
stay?
I, I, I might have done it once or twice, but usually I don't move them.
Yeah,
They are there, and then I also one of the drums where I have a contact microphone or the cowbell. Sometimes I use a very big cowbell, so I
yeah,
can also put things on top, and it catches the sound.
the
Yeah,
sound. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Sometimes I put a metal plate on top, or a wood piece, or a shaker.
Yeah.
If
Wow.
I'm using if I'm playing solo and if I'm using um I used to you have some condenser mics like that piece you mentioned on at Visual Music.
Yeah, you.
I'm using
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
Those
have
are the ones
condenser
that you use with your hand, right? Like, and
exactly.
yeah. Okay. Like, if you could elaborate on that. Sorry, I lost you for a second, I think.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So I have condenser mics, yeah, and then I send the input to my Maxam ESP
Okay.
patch, and then the patch works. Also, the motorized music box is usually with contact microphone. Um, and if I'm playing with other musicians, for sure I'm using contact mics because the condenser will also the other musicians will bleed in the condenser microphones.
Definitely.
Sometimes it's good. We do it on purpose, and I know that I'm gonna have the trombone or the trumpet in my microphone. Uh, yeah, but that's how when I started, I started with condenser microphones, and I was lucky enough. I received some very cheap old condenser mics that were good for making experiments and for scratch and for putting inside things. So I could really experiment a lot with that. But when I started to play more with other musicians and to develop my solo and develop my sound, then I transition to I start using more and more contact mics than condenser mics.
Yeah.
It helps um, to control the sound and the bleeding and there's other possibilities. Yeah.
And is that mic that you use, that you take by your hand and you just, like, point it towards, like, to get electroacoustic, results from cymbals, and all that? What kind of microphone is that? That, I guess it's like a dynamic.
It yeah, it's a condenser mic.
Mhm.
This one there's one I scratch in the gong. It's a
I see.
Akagi uh, 1000. I don't know the model, but it's one of those Akagi's microphone.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, it's a condenser.
I see.
Some I have some setups where I use dynamic microphones. Um, it's it's nice to control the the input, the peaks, and also if I'm playing with other musicians, but the sound is completely different for processing the
Mm-mm-mm.
yeah the content or much more detailed
Or
and
better.
shape it better. Yes,
I see. Yeah.
yeah.
And when you were talking before about using motors, like little engines or something, I saw, like, in a couple of videos that you have, this like little box that you use with a spinning handle. Is that what it
Mhm.
is? Is it this motor you were talking about, or is it something different?
It belongs to the same family.
Okay.
I have some music boxes and some objects, yeah, that I have to do it manually. But I have a set. I have here. I can show you. I have a setup with motorized music boxes So they have a motor, electric motor, and I don't have to do it manually. I have a controller, or I can tell Max MESP, play this and program, and it's shall I show it to you?
Yeah, if you want, yes, I love it.
Yeah,
I
I cannot make it work now, but I can just
okay.
show you. Okay, so I have this self-made instrument.
Wow.
Ah, are you there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're there.
So those are motorized music boxes. Each one has a different tune.
Wow.
I have a motor, and then I have this self-made controller here, which I can control manually. Each one is playing the speed. Now it needs to be repaired. That's why I have it here at home, but to be repaired. Uh, um, so I can play one of them or all of them at the same time, but I also can connect it with Max MESP or yeah, or any other
Wow.
p-
And
program that uses a MIDI protocol and I can automatize. Now I can only turn on and off. I cannot control the speed. It has to be repaired. But
is it sounding?
yes, can you hear that?
No. Maybe it's like
What?
the
No.
maybe it's like the noise cancellation setting in Zoom.
Ah,
Thing, you know.
okay, yeah, but it's okay. But let me see if I start.
Nothing. No, and maybe yeah, there is like probably this noise cancellation
Okay.
setting, but no, I don't
Ah,
think.
okay.
But anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for showing it. Like, did you make it yourself, or you had it made
Uh,
by somebody else?
I had the idea and I wanted to build it myself with together with a friend. That was the plan, but one day I got home and he had built it everything.
Ah,
I did.
nice.
I wanna be part of the. Oh no, I wanna make you a surprise. So yeah, uh,
Wow.
yeah. But I had to. Yeah, I bought the music boxes. I was online. I remember making a lot of research to where uh, because I thought I had to build the motors, but then I found a manufacturer that already built them with a motor.
Okay.
And so I was thinking, oh, maybe I have to build a very complicated device to do this, a machine. But
Yeah.
then I found those with a motor. Yeah.
Well, I may text you and ask you where you bought them because
It was ages ago. I can try to find it, but it
I
was
would love.
long ago. Yeah.
And so like they make this board, this wooden board vibrate, and that's how they make sound. Is that how it works?
Yeah, no, you don't need the wood boards
Okay.
because it's like those you do manually. You don't,
Yeah.
you know, but with the wood, then you have the wood resonating.
Exactly. Yeah.
And and if you put a box, I could have built an acoustic box, then it would resonate even more.
Yeah.
But for transport and for gigs, this is already enough. And usually you can put a condenser microphone, but with contact microphone, it's much better. Usually I put a contact microphone in the wood board, and that's how I use them live.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
you don't place that that structure on the kit. No, it's something that works.
No, in the past I had on the left side this
Okay.
the mixer and the music boxes, and I would turn them on and off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't use them so anymore on my, but there was a time I used them in my
Wow.
with drum kits. Yeah.
Super interesting. And yeah, I had a quick question about Troops and Findings. That it's like your solo album and your solo projects. I just wanted to like to ask you if you could um, quickly say something about like the recording process, where the album was recorded. You know, how do you like what that album pictures and contains in terms of your research.
Yeah, I I started to record my solo pieces that were more composed at the beginning in 2017.
Hmm.
Or yes, it was 17. Yes. So I started this, okay, I have so much material. I haven't invested in making records. I'm more playing, composing, and playing. I don't have, I didn't, it was something that was far away from my field of action. And then, but I started to recording the piece, some of the pieces with my brother. My brother is a sound engineer and he owns a studio.
Nice.
So every now and then I was there. Oh, let's record one piece. Oh, let's. Uh, and then one day I went there and I recorded also some pieces, some improvisations with drum sets. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna put a record out. And I choose some of the pieces that were recorded. So I ended up, it's a double album, Trips and Findings. So two pieces are a bit older, and I recorded in 2017, um, which have no drum sets. One of the pieces is the piece I play at Museum Music with a
Okay.
table and with
Yeah. Yeah.
gongs, scratching. Uh, is that piece. Another piece, is one using the music boxes, the motorized music boxes. It's also an older piece, more composed, uh, that I also played several times back in the day. Um, and then I included two more improvised pieces with using the drum sets. So I choose those four pieces. And yeah, so it was my decision. Um, I was, because sometimes when you make a record, you like to show what you're doing now or which project you like to play live. Uh, And I said, for me, this is it's difficult to approach things that way because I'm always changing things. I it, what I'm doing today might not be what I'm gonna be doing tomorrow. So I said, yeah, no, it's more it's an overview of what I have been doing.
Yeah.
Trips and findings. It's not a record to show, oh, that's that phase of my life. No, different pieces, different periods, different styles. I thought it a lot in terms of records like in classic music that you have different pieces from different composers or several pieces from the same composer. That's more how I thought of the records.
Okay.
This,
Interesting.
so let me think. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. And do you record yourself when you play like also live, and you go back to listen to what you did in order to understand, okay, I could do this differently, I could do that, like do you use the recording in order to kind of like self mirroring and understanding what you could do differently, or like yours it's just like an exploratory process for which like you change every time, and like every live performance is a different experience, so like and the audience gets what they get,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I don't do it very consistently. I do it sometimes and I listen. I every time I listen, I think I give a step forward. Like, oh, this texture would have worked better that way, or oh, this sounds just when I was playing, I was not so aware of the effect it was causing, and now that I'm listening to the recording, I say, oh, this is really cool. I could really explore
Yeah,
this dimension of the sound, or this kind of technique, or this preparation. At the time I was, some preparation, I just improvised, and then when oh, this was actually nice, or the opposite, oh no, this I shouldn't do this again. So I feel like when I record and I see from the outside, I always feel like I make progress. uh, on the other hand, uh, once Robin Chulkovsky, the percussionist Robin Chulkovsky, who's amazing, and yeah, um, I saw an interview with her, and uh, she said something that resonated with me. That at some point of her life, she had to confront herself to the fact that you cannot master that art, because there's always something new, always something you have to. And this was, she had to deal with that for some times, because she thought she was not there. And then at some point, no, I'm not gonna be uh, so so when I hear my recordings, I'm confronted that I think, oh, this should be better. And then I said, yeah, if I improve here, this is gonna be better. There's gonna be always some dimension that I'm gonna be skeptical or critical about. And okay, I think so I try to balance and to listen, but uh, not.
yeah, not.
I don't know if I have my idea. I'm
Yeah,
lacking a
yeah,
bit of words.
yeah. You know, no,
I'm.
definitely, but maybe not being too like
It can
critical
cause me
and
some
too harsh.
frustration.
Definitely.
Yeah, it can cause some frustration, yeah, especially if you're improvising, because improvisation, it's not a ready product. It's not something you plan and you do and that's here, take it. No, it's a process. It's always evolving. So I try to balance a bit. And
Yeah.
of course, these days we have to deal with social media. So yeah, video recordings and document your work and put it out there to show that you're alive.
Exactly. Also, yeah, and I guess like it always changes, like the performative aspect also based on the space where you're in, the audience. So it's like
Yeah.
really a lot of different factors. And according to like, and in relationship to this, I wanted to ask you, like when you go to play a solo, like do you go there way before? Do you go to the place way before in order to like set up, understand, the resonances of the place? Like do you place your drum set in a specific, place based on, the space where you're in? Like you interact with this, like how's your relationship with the space, and also like with the audience within your solo performances?
Um,
Hard questions. No.
no, when I have a solo, I try to advocate for myself as much as possible, and I need more space, or my setup is usually demanding to set up. Sometimes they give you sound check 20 minutes for each performer. You know,
No,
I
no.
need I need much more than that to set up. And after I put the contact microphones, my setup cannot be moved. So because there's cables everywhere, and the pedals going through under the hi-hat. And so when it's done, either you have a big carpet that you can drag or something, otherwise you cannot move my setup. So I have all of these logistic and technical things and then I have to advocate for myself so I can have the performance setting that I wish for myself.
Mhm.
So I have been lucky. Normally, I explain, and I have been given enough time. Or sometimes I end up playing first very often because of the logistics of my setup, um, which I don't mind at all. Of course, I like to, I don't mind the
Yeah.
order, but um, um, sorry, I got a bit lost.
No,
Um,
don't
ah,
worry.
yeah,
This like the
exactly.
I guess.
And yeah, yeah, no, I think I'm a visual thinker, so I always try to, it has to be comfortable. And sometimes I also go to the other side, I look to my setup. Um, uh, yeah, and with the acoustics and to tune the drums or to dampen what has to be done to sound the way I want it.
Yeah.
Um, um, I try to play in places that have a good PA, so we have a good electronics. So I have also been lucky with that. And there have been situations where I had to, or I was invited to visit the space before. For instance, last year I was invited by the Haus der Kultur der Welt to sonify a silent movie. It was 90 minutes.
Okay.
90, yeah, and we wanted to do something special. So I went there a few days before. We thought, how can we make it more performative and less a person playing with a movie in the background?
Mm-hmm.
The idea of the curator, it was that everything is important. The setup, how you are on stage, the movie. It's not a movie with a background music. So in fact, I built two setups on stage, one on the left and on the right, completely different setups. And the movie itself was already had five different parts with a short intermission. So I changed. So those intermissions,
It's
uh,
nice.
so yeah, and every each setup have a completely different sound possibilities. So when this in the movie happens, this and this, it's gonna be this setup here. When this, then it's gonna be the setup on the left. So
Wow.
for me, for me that's the ideal setting. If I can go to a place and design the performance and the setup and the sound to to the space and to the audience.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Super interesting. And so like with this movie, like you had it before, like you didn't just like improvise on the music, like but you could structure your performance based on
Yeah. I watched the movie several times before. So I imagine it was a movie called De Golem. It's considered one of the first horror movies. So I watched the movie
yeah.
and how which which parts of my music vocabulary
Could fit best if
exactly how can I do? So I had to go to my archive, and yeah, and I had the chance to bring things that I wouldn't have used otherwise. I have also a piece that I play with balls. I fill balls with things,
Mhm.
and then I switch the contact, and then I flip the balls. I use them as a percussion, and I turn them, and this kind of sounds I do in that piece could be in that part of the movie. So
Interesting.
yeah, so I have to revisit my archive and yeah, I make uh,
Yeah. Wow.
uh,
Interesting.
yeah.
Um, yeah, now before letting you go, like I wanted to ask you like a few questions more like related to I guess like the identity of the drummer, performer, percussionist. Yeah. And it's very interesting that, since you don't come from, like a jazz context, but you come from classical music. I'm wondering um, if you felt like the conditioning of, like the traditional role of the drummer, if within, the way you play, or if it's, since like you come from a totally different background, um, eh, like you didn't really experience like how some like historical and anthropological biases related to the historical role and identity of like the drummer could influence your approach to the drums, like for example the timekeeping function of the drummer, like the fact that the drummer comps the soloists and serves the soloists, of course, like I can hear that you have a very, Eurocentric approach to, to the um to, to,
Mhm.
to the drums and within your solo performance. So I was interested in knowing if that's, something that somehow you think about or you thought about.
Uh-huh. Sure, of course. Since from the beginning, first there's this the first percussion group I had, it was in fact a group that was very focused on African percussion. When I was a teenager, it was the first contact I had. I had some friends playing, and then I joined them, and then we had some performances. And um, I felt uh, I felt like I'm a girl at the time. I was 14, 15. I'm a girl playing this. Will people gonna take me serious? It was, because I don't see at the professional level, I don't see so many women doing this. I'm doing this. Should I be doing this? Are people gonna judge me because I'm doing this? So it was some kind of discomfort that I cannot really articulate. That sometimes, even today, sometimes if I'm involved in a more eccentric dance or theater production, and if my students or somebody ask me, I still have this thing like, oh, will people gonna judge me if they know that I'm doing these things? So, which is no problem. I'm just playing music, uh, but I felt that at the beginning, um, and when I went to the conservatory to play classical music, there's there's some dynamics that make me feel that I'm a woman or a girl. I'm here. My colleagues are mostly men. There was another woman in the percussion class, but in fact, uh, s I, my colleagues were really nice, and my teacher. Sometimes, there's this, sometimes if they want to say to curse, it's sometimes in Portugal, like if men want to curse and say, they tell women,
Yeah, yeah, shut your ears or
yeah,
something.
just, yeah, yeah, and come on, it's so there's these things, I'm not gonna, I heard people cursing before, it's not new for me, so sometimes there was this kind of jokes, but in fact, my colleagues were, they had much more experience for very different reasons. The backgrounds they came, they had already practiced playing in orchestra and reading music that I didn't have, and they were super quick, and I learned a lot from them. Um, and they were super helpful, and so there was some discomfort, but still I felt, uh, especially now looking back, I say, oh wow, I had a good, considering all the factors. I was in a constructive setting that didn't make me quit, because I had experience, or I have another women colleagues that were in settings that they had to quit. They were super harassed, and they really had to quit. I didn't. there was some discomfort sometimes, but also a lot of support, and I still get along with all my colleagues from that time. So, and with my teacher. So he's on Instagram. He's retired now, but we still have some connection. And when I look back, I said, "Oh wow, I didn't have to go to super traumatic process as a student, as a in that phase that is so important. The worst experience happened later in the when I was bachelor, master, and then in professional life. But that the beginning, in fact, yeah, especially looking back, I said, "Oh wow, I." It should have been normal, but it was luck that I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
such
yeah,
a
yeah.
setting. Yeah. Yeah, and then when I started playing jazz, still at the conservatory, there was a big band, and I started to playing at the big band. I had a very good teacher. In fact, I started playing drums because of him.
Mm.
I joined the big band to play vibraphone. I thought, yeah, drums, it's not for me. There's a lot of my colleagues, the boys, they all
Want to
are
play
very
drums?
confident.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I'm gonna play vibraphone, which I was playing anyway. I had a band, a rock band when I was playing vibraphone in that band. So I'm gonna, yeah. But on the first day, I was the only student from the percussion department who
Oh, shut up.
came. So
Okay.
my teacher was, yes, sorry, we need someone to make ding 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 ding, ding. So and then I was, oh no, I panicked a bit. I was, there was some kind of feeling of shame, like I'm doing something that it's not like
That I'm not supposed to be doing, like in the collective
exactly.
imaginary or something.
Yeah,
Mm.
this is, I'm not supposed, and then people are going, oh my God, the girl playing drums and playing jazz, some kind of shame. I don't know to explain, but it's a feeling that creates a lot of insecurity. Even people tell you, no, no, you're doing great. Oh, but I'm here,
Yeah, yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah.
It's like if you're wearing a weird costume, like, and people are looking at you. And but this teacher was amazing. He's a very good pedagogue and jazz musician in Portugal, and he's super supportive those years. And then because of this experience, I went to that private jazz school called the Hot Club in Lisbon. I was a few semesters there, and I uh, and slowly that feeling of shame and embarrassment, like feeling that I'm doing something that people are going to comment and going to say, oh, look what she's doing. And that maybe, I don't know how much of that is in my head and how much uh, is it real, but that's what I felt at the time.
Yeah.
But in fact, when I was in that jazz school, I started to have invitations from my colleagues, from male colleagues. Oh, we have a session tomorrow. You want to join us? And and then it was the first time I saw it like, oh, this is in fact a possibility. I can play drums because uh, sometimes I saw some colleagues would invite me, they didn't want me to join them, but others really want to, and they, hey, no, no, come play with us. Oh, we have a gig on Friday. Oh, there's a jam session, and it's and I slowly started to be part of the and slowly those feelings that, oh, I is this really for me, or are people commenting? They slowly start to disappear, and but of course, I was in that jazz school, I didn't finish the program because, and I went to study composition because the way, at least at the time, jazz was being taught academically, I thought this is not for me,
Mm-hmm.
because jazz is always for me. It's the music that is freedom and creativity is really important, and the way I was learning, it felt very conservative, more than the conservatory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the conservatory, I could play so many music from so many composers. F- and there was a music theater class. I was in the music theater class. So, and then there I'm playing standards, bebop, mostly swing style from morning till I felt like I was only doing one thing. And in the conservatory, I felt like I have a lot of things, a much more variety of things to do. So I didn't really felt I'm not gonna play standards when I leave the jazz school. So do I really have to invest all of this time and money here
Yeah.
learning the real book? As much as I like the music and the records and so is this an investment worth making? And then I went to study composition. That was the time that I had to decide, well, if I pursue jazz studies or I don't know. I think I didn't really answer to your question.
No,
I started.
you did it. It was just like a, just a prompt to start, to start a conversation about it. Uh, yeah, 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 yeah. So, but so do you think that in your experience there's a connection between the way you play and your gender identity, or also your ethnical identity, like since you're European, coming from a certain you know music tradition. I don't know what kind of music you were exposed to as a kid, um,
Yeah.
but and also as a woman, because I guess maybe it's just stereotypes, of course, but I feel there could be a
Oh,
common thread, like in the sense that we look for certain things instead of others, and I don't know if it's like a female or a male thing. And maybe it's just not, but I don't know. Just wanted to hear
yeah.
your
No, I think sometimes we women have a pressure to be better because if you're not better, uh, if you are average, people won't consider you. You have to, and so there's a lot of pressure. Um, and also if you are creative or trying something different, sometimes you're not taking serious because that's not the right way of doing things. And I think we have a lot of pressure in that sense, women. Like if a man is trying something new and being creative, it's like, wow. But if it's a woman, I think it's more difficult to be taken serious unless it's extremely good that you cannot, like, oh my God, what a genius. If it's genius level, they take you serious. But if it's you know, if it's just exciting or okay, no. And band don't have that pressure. They change to things and oh wow, what a fantastic! He's using a contact mic. It's I had that recently. I was working with someone who told me, I know he builds his contact mics. I also built my contact mics. It's not a big deal. You just have to
not a
put
big
two
deal,
people.
isn't it? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but and I told her, look, it's not a big deal to build a microphone, contact mic, but yeah, oh my God, he's doing this. Yeah, a lot of women also do that, and so there's this pressure, and at some point I had to okay, I don't want to play. When I restarted playing drums after my composition studies, I said no, I want to play the way I want. I don't want to be forced. If I cannot make money from this, I will have another job, but I don't see the point of forcing myself to fit here or there. So yeah, if I play 1 gig a year, I play 1 gig a year, but I want to play the things I want and do the experiments I want, even if it means to find another job, which I had for some time, a job here in Berlin when I moved to Berlin. But so I think, yeah, women have all of these constraints when they want to be creative and to follow their own voice. And in fact, what you just mentioned in terms of identity, I'm European. I was born and raised in Portugal, but my grandparents, they come from 3 different continents.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, my great parents. And there's always, normally it's not something I disclose publicly. I say, because people always say, the music is what it's important. And Uh, but why should I've been mentioning that? But I had situations, very awkward situations, because one of my grandparents come from Cabo Verde, from Africa, and I have my grandparents from my father's side. They come from Brazil. They are of native Brazilian descent, and sometimes people are surprised that I don't express that neither in my daily identity or my music identity. Um, and which for me it's normal. I have there's many, maybe and they are not visible, that cultural heritage because they don't manifest in a way you can see or hear,
Sure.
but
Hmm.
um, uh, but sometimes people are surprised and they ask me, "Oh, so why don't you do this, or why don't you do that?" Sometimes in a way that it's really awkward. I had two experiences. Once having the suggestion that I could dress like an African. I was told that, oh, but you could wear because then it would be no more exotic. You could sell to other markets, and you could marketing yourself as a Afro-European. And and for me, it's no. I am who I am. I'm not, and I don't. It would be okay if I would want to marketing myself like this, but I never really. It never came from
Yeah, it's
inside.
something that has to come from you, not from outside. Otherwise, it's not honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes people tell me, "Oh, that's a pity. Yeah, what a shame. You what? Now I'm a boring European just because I don't want to be to be more exotic or play samba or use some it's sometimes it's something I have to deal with.
Right? Wow,
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Yeah, and also being Portuguese and in the classical music scene, it's also because there's a kind of a romantic idea about Portugal that we play fado and we sing fado, and then no, but we also
Do
build
other things.
sensors and we have technology and we compose music and we write. There's great Portuguese composers. I was telling a friend of mine that, for instance, the Berliner Philharmonica, as far as I know, never played a piece by a Portuguese composer,
Wow.
but they hosted fado singers. They have this jazz series there, and jazz singers fit the
Just
fado
run
singers.
there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but Portuguese composers are not
They're not
considered.
allowed. Oh my.
No, because yeah, why? If they have fado, why are they composing music? So it's
Yeah.
yeah, so there's all of these preconceived ideas which box you should fit. Is something you have to struggle with. And I think if you're a woman, you have to struggle even more to this. No, I don't put me in that box. No, that's yeah.
And so, do you think like playing solo for you has anything to do with a feeling of like isolation and I don't want to say exclusion, but from people, or that's something that it's you don't think it's connected?
I think in my case, I think there's so many things that push me to play solo. Once is that a musician, or also me having the practice of, studying classical music, that you have to be alone many, many hours just to practice those pieces and to learn that. And also composing. Composing for me, it's very, very solitary. It's where I feel like, oh, why do I have to deal with this alone? Yeah. So, and I also like to paint and to draw. I paint and draw. So those are activities that you are alone with yourself. So I feel like performance is just a part of that. It's yeah, I'm alone painting, drawing, practicing my instrument, composing. Yeah, I can also go stage solo.
Hmm.
Um, I think it belongs to the same
Same space, yeah. That it
the same
doesn't
space.
necessarily
Exactly.
have to do like with maybe the social isolation also that as a woman can like we can experience.
Yeah. And if you are working with others, you have um, uh, you have to make compromises. If you have a band, a trio, regardless which music style it is, even if you have a string quartet that only plays classical music, you have to make compromises and find a
Like a
common ground with your
common
colleagues.
ground. Mhm.
And and I feel the need of having a space where I don't have to make compromises with others. I also work, have a lot of collaborative work. I have a
Yeah.
duo. Yesterday I
Yeah.
played with my duo, but I feel like I need a space where I don't have to, even if I'm gonna bang with my head on, on the wall and oh, why did I need it. And I like I give it's very rewarding for me to have that space.
Uh-huh. Uh,
Um, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. It's, there's like 1 minute left for the meeting.
Oh,
I had one last question, which was like, um, why do you like to perform solo, and what are you trying to express to the audience with your project? But I fear that this might take more than 1 minute. So if you agree, I will
oh,
give you
it's
another
one thing I always mention is the vulnerability. I cannot say the word.
vulnerability. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I oh
Vulner
my God.
English.
But I also cannot say vulnerability that
Vulnerability. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Of that, it's you are there, you are very exposed, you cannot hide. No one can comes and you cannot wait for the other person to give an idea and I think that confrontation of the vulnerability and the strength that comes along with that, the polarity, it's not polarity, but the dichotomy of that of yeah, I'm very attracted to the vulnerability of that act and the strength that implies at the same time you are very exposed, it's only you. And in the end, I think it's a bit the metaphor of life. We have other people, but in the end, we have to do to find our voice, find our own path, solve our problems, express ourselves. It's yeah, for me, it's I never thought of it. Oh, why? Because maybe, as I told at the beginning, I had no choice. I was learning classical music. I had to play solo, so it was already there. It was always a part of my music practice. Um, but I think in the end, for me, yeah, it's the metaphor of life. We have to use our hands and make decisions
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and deal with that.
Of course, of course, yeah. And in the audience, in that like in that context, do you think of the audience when you perform, like, a, like it's something that, like how the audience could get, or could interpret, like your
Yeah,
it's something that you're awarely think of.
yeah. I think the audience connects very deeply with that vulnerability.
Okay.
Uh, like if you're a singer and if you are playing with your band and suddenly your voice, something happened. Oh my God, her voice. But if you are playing solo and you have something with your voice, people are gonna feel compassion. Well, I don't want to be too romantic, but there's something that people connect immediately if um, on a very deep and personal level because they identify themselves with the situation. Not only if things go wrong, but also if they go well.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, if you are in a group setting in a band or with an ensemble, that's not so prominent. But if you are solo, I feel like people connect with that immediately, with the vulnerability, with the position you are there alone doing something, and we all in life have to do things by ourselves and take decisions, and I feel people connect with that really well, and I see the feedback I get from solo performance and the warmth from the audience, or sometimes even the critics. It's different from when I play with another group. I always feel there's another level of depth, and there's another level of engagement,
Mhm. Like
and
you're
another
more
level.
exposed, and so you're also
Yeah,
more accessible by people. Like people come and talk to you after the concerts, maybe.
and another level of empathy. That's what I was gonna say next. There's an empathy that people come and yeah,
Nice.
and they connect, even if they're not musicians and they the first time. I think uh, because in the I think in a very intuitive way they identify themselves even if they never played an instrument or performed on stage, because in their lives they also had these moments where okay, I have now I cannot hide, I have to present myself to the world and do this. Yeah.
Wow, that's a beautiful way to see it, actually. Wow. Um, yeah. Anything else you want to add that I don't know, that you think it's important to mention about your practice, that I didn't touch upon?
No, I'm very impressed. You were very well documented and very well informed. Um, and I think we covered more or less. I think we covered everything. I
Okay. Well,
uh,
I really thank you so much for for doing this and for being willing to meet with me and help me out understand better like your process and your approach to to the music, your vision and everything. It was really really interesting, and also like I really will cherish this experience because yeah, it was really generous from you.
thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for including me in your research. I wish you the best of luck. I'm very curious to see what the other musicians say when the videos are out, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
learn and to dive in other people's creative minds.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, and I'm really glad you're doing this work, and then it's gonna be out so we can share our perspectives
Yeah,
and
definitely.
learn from each other.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. All right.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll let you be. Thank you so much, and have a great week ahead, I guess. So, thank
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. Have
you.
a good
Really
day.
nice meeting you. Ciao, Sophie.
Yeah, to meet you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.